in the same paper that Uncle Elmer and Aunt Edith used. Do parents congratulate the child on solving the puzzle and welcome him or her to the world of adult reasoning? I'm sure that happens occasionally, but not usually. And you know, what's going on here? When young children are forming their suspicions about Santa Claus, in many cases, maybe most cases, those children are making their first real attempt at critical thinking. And their reward for it is usually to get smokescreened. Hey, this is a great child development program. Number 3, the myth encourages lazy parenting and promotes unhealthy fear. I'm going to give you an opportunity to think of some familiar lyrics in a way different than you usually think of them. He knows when you are sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. What must life be like for a child who takes that literally? Big Brother really is watching every moment, catching even transgressions that parents might miss. There is no privacy. In fact, if privacy were possible, it would be immoral, as it would upset childhood's system of justice, which is enforced by the magical fat man at the North Pole. Number 4. Oh, no, it's the wrong picture. Sorry about that. The myth harms children's moral and emotional development and damages family dynamics. That's a much better picture of Santa Claus. The noted therapist, the central role of Santa in what is supposed to be a family holiday exerts a potentially harmful influence. The noted therapist Renzo Sereno observed that parents who become dependent on the Santa myth, quoting now, need the reassurance of deceitful acts in order to secure from their children the feelings and the conduct which should be their right and their duty to expect. The child begins to nourish doubts about the love of his parents and resents being obligated to a mythical, ludicrous stranger rather than being tied by love to those he loves most. Parental love, diffused through a maze of pointless and never explained ceremonies, is wholly lost. You know, I love that phrase, mythical, ludicrous stranger. In fact, I'm going to take a break here for a moment and conduct a brief scientific test. I'm conducting a scientific analysis of audiences in the Midwest and audiences in the East. Have you ever wondered what's wrong with Santa Claus? That every time he walks into a room, he behaves as though he's just spotted 3 women of uneasy virtue. You know, ho, ho, ho. Oh, you guys are good. Most Midwestern audiences don't get it until the ho, ho, ho. Folks on the East Coast are so jaded and cynical, and their minds are so far in the gutter that I don't have half the setup out before they get it. Well, let's move on to number 5. Oh, no, pardon me, this is still 4. Let's not forget the Santa myth's devastating effect on poor families. I mean, think about it. According to the myth, Christmas presents don't come from mom and dad, they come from Santa Claus. So the fact that one's parents are poor ought to have no bearing on the bounty under the tree, yet oddly life doesn't usually act like that. When deep poverty allows for little or nothing under the tree, poor children often conclude that either they're bad or for some other reason Santa Claus doesn't love them. And that's one reason why in the African American community over about the last 15 years, there's been a growing minority fighting back against the myth of Santa Claus for precisely that reason. Okay, well now we go to number 5. The myth promotes selfishness and acquisitive attitudes among children. If you can't read the fine print of the poster in the back rows, it says, I want you to spend a lot to prove you love your family. Well, again, the research is unambiguous. Contrary to adult fantasies that belief in Santa Claus teaches children how to give, It teaches them instead how to take. There was a very famous study in which children were provided a non-Christmas related environment in which to write down lists of things that they might like. And they tended to be very generous in putting down things like good health, strong bodies, long lives for members of their family, feed the poor. The kids were pretty altruistic. You take the same kids and say, okay, now you're writing a letter to Santa Claus, and all they ask for is things. I mean, I suppose you could ask Santa Claus, hey Santa, please cure my mother's cancer, but they don't. The lesson's pretty clear. The lesson that the Santa myth teaches boils down to one word with 2 syllables, and that word is gimme. Sixth and last, children may not enjoy the Santa Claus drama as much as parental nostalgia suggests. Numerous studies have found that most children react with fear to their first encounter with Santa at the mall or the big box store. No wonder one of the best-selling books a couple of holiday seasons ago was a picture book filled with photos of children screaming in terror on Santa's lap. This is a real book. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's about 200 pages, and there's a picture like that on every page. They could find the pictures. So, let me set subtleties. The Santa story is quite simply a lie. You didn't think I could top that last page, did you? It's a lie told almost universally in the United States, and indeed in every country to which contemporary Christmas has spread. In all these lands, it's now a principal rite of passage for pre-adolescents to discover that the most cherished belief of their childhood was an elaborate parental lie. If that defines us, I shudder to think what kind of a people we're becoming. Let's all just say no to Santa Claus. Now let me sum up, although don't get overconfident, that doesn't mean I'm almost done. If Christianity is untrue, if Christianity is true, the hodgepodge story of Christmas is unworthy of it. If, as atheists and secular humanists believe Christianity is not true, then Christmas is a mishmash of untruths, bad guesses, illicit cultural borrowings, and subterfuge. In any case, the holiday is far too culturally and religiously narrow to serve a global society. Those are just some of the reasons why, for better than a quarter century now, I've done away with Christmas altogether, from the hot buttered rum to rum-pa-pum-pum. Some say I go too far. Some say that I throw away too much that is loving and affirming and, well, fun. Some accuse me of throwing the babe out with the bathwater. Don't worry, I'm not going to throw that graphic back up there. But we are atheists, freethinkers, secular humanists. We, of all people, discarded the babe long ago. The question is, why do some of us still cling so tenaciously, yes, to the bathwater? Actually, if I can wax serious for a moment, there's a more basic question. If all I've said is true, how ought secular humanists to respond to the Christian's birthday festival? And I think more of us ought to be a lot more conspicuous in sitting it out. We should be visible, not celebrating Christmas, or the winter solstice, or even newfangled humanist observances like human life. Well, wow, what can I have against these alternative holidays for freethinkers? Well, I've already noted that most of the religious traditions associated with Christmas are pagan. The solstice, too, is freighted with pagan themes. Yet we are secular humanists, we're atheists, we're rationalists, we're freethinkers. We are people who have rejected, or if you prefer a loaded word, we are people who've outgrown all religions. If we are not Christians, we are not pagans either. So it seems to me incredible that pagan observances, however cleverly recycled, should speak to us or express the ideals of our community. Consider, too, what the winter solstice was for those long-ago pagans who celebrated it authentically. They were northern peoples with subsistence-level technologies for whom winter held vivid terrors. As the days grew shorter and colder, they had real dread that the days might never stop getting shorter. One day these ancients feared light, and with it life, might run out. They came to imagine that only their woodland rituals fortified their tribal gods with power enough to prevail over darkness and evil. Because the magic was strong, on some bright tomorrow, which could be conveniently enough only by the priests, the days would lengthen again. Though the coldest days of winter would still lie ahead, the skies gave the promise of spring. Well, that was probably all well and good for the ancients, but what part of that mythos authentically engages people like us? Scientifically literate moderns who possess first an elementary grasp of planetary mechanics, and second, central heating. Frankly, I find it embarrassing when secular humanists invest the winter solstice with so much emotional resonance. We know the days will get longer all by themselves. South of the equator, they'll get shorter. It's no big deal. For men and women of reason, it should be no big deal. Adding even the echo of mysticism to our regard for this ordinary astronomical process just strikes me as unscientific. And I'd have to say the same about human light, which draws much of its imagery from the solstice celebration's fascination with light, that commodity that outdoors is in such worrisomely dwindling supply. Thanks to, among others, good atheists like Thomas Edison, the last thing any American needs to worry about is running out of light. After all, how many of us take vacations and go out somewhere in the country for dark skies just so we can see the stars? To style an observance as human light, to echo our ancestors' lust for hard-to-come-by illumination, that rings totally false in relation to the way we live our lives today. I mean, what's the point? More to the point, let's consider the strategic consequences when we choose to just go along with the general celebration. Sure, we know we're not keeping Christmas, we're rather keeping some alternative holiday. Still, doing even that plants us firmly in the camp of those who are keeping some holiday, any holiday, at this time of year. Not everyone does, you know. Buddhists don't, Taoists don't, Confucianists don't, Jehovah's Witnesses don't. Hardly anyone from an authentic tropical culture does. If you come from a tropical clime, solstice means nothing to you. Some unbelievers don't. Around the globe, plenty of people aren't observing any holiday at all this time of year. Not only don't they need to hear Merry Christmas, they don't even need to hear Happy Holidays, and we should be among them. Now let's focus on the politics of it. Sure, we can tell each other we're celebrating solstice or human life. We're doing our special thing. We're not keeping Christmas. We may set great store by these fine distinctions, but they're lost on most who observe us. Our fellow citizens just peer into our living room windows as they drive past or walk the dog. And all they see are more people trimming trees, exchanging gifts, and claiming the alleged birthday of Jesus as a day off. When we keep a winter holiday just like the Christians do, or close enough to it that they can't tell the difference, we make ourselves disappear. But that's not the worst of it. We contribute to a myth dear to Christian conservatives, the myth that everyone is a de facto Christian at holiday time. As far as O'Reilly and Glenn Beck's fans are concerned, all of us non-Christians are just joining in to herald the birth of their Prince of Peace. The only thing that might shake their confidence